Okay. All right. I'd like to welcome all of you to our Utah County Board of Adjustment meeting. This is the 4th day of February 2016. It's just 5:15 p.m. And if you've come here just lately and haven't signed the roll and would like to comment on one of the appeals that are listed on the agenda, please make sure you do it. It's in the back of the room, and mark what appeal that you're interested in saying something. If you're just here to listen, that's fine as well. You can also mark the roll. We will follow the agenda as outlined and published, and we'll begin with the approval of minutes of our last meeting on January 7th. Is there any member of the board who's read through the minutes, or it's been pretty lengthy, but we'll do them and see if they would like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from our last meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Gordon Duvall, I'll abstain, I wasn't here last week.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mention Gordon Duvall is a new member of the Board of Adjustment, and since he wasn't here last month, he's not going to participate in the first two items that were continued from last month, number 1552 and 1553. But I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Adjustment, Gordon, and appreciate your service.
Thank you.
So the minutes have been approved, and we will now move on to the applications that we have before us. The first one is a continuance from last month, appeal number 1552, Snowbird Ski and Summer Resort, making application for conditional use for a permit for accessory ski lifts and various associated mountain resort facilities in the CE1 zone in American Fort Canyon of Utah. And I wanted at this point to thank all those who made comments. We have a large number of the public who have commented on this and filled our email boxes with a lot of good material. So thank you very much for your comments just in preface to what we have to do today. So I'd like to turn the time over to Bryce Armstrong from Planning to go over the application, where we're at with that from last month, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. I'll just cover a couple housekeeping items here first. As the chair mentioned, we have received a substantial amount of information since last meeting, both from the applicant and also public comment. We've done our best to get that distributed to you, and I'll highlight some of those specific items related to the application here in a second as we give an update. One other comment I should make relative to the public comment, there was somewhat of a new strategy implemented a couple days ago, and I received several hundred, 700 or 800, I guess it was about 700 emails. I think both from both sides of the issue, and we tried to assimilate those and get those distributed this afternoon. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to get through all those. This is a very important issue to people on both sides of the matter, and we consider all those comments very important to the people that made them. I guess one way to handle that is just as a summary. I guess it was an effort to kind of show support or opposition to the proposal. We had our staff kind of run through it real quick, and well, I actually read quite a few, many we could get to. But I got the gist of what each one was, what side of the issue each one was on. Out of, it looks like about 631 as of about 3 o'clock today. We had 386 emails that supported the application and 234 that opposed. Again, this is nothing scientific. This was certain methods on each side of the party. So I guess there were 11 that we kind of undecided where they were at on that. So relative to that, I just want to share a couple sections of the ordinance. Again, these are important comments, and it's important to a lot of people. But I should mention a reminder of what we're kind of dealing with tonight as approval of a conditional use application. I'm going to read from the Utah County Land Use Ordinance, kind of as it relates to public comment for a conditional use application. This is from section 7-16-B of the Utah County Land Use Ordinance. This is the roles and duties of the Board of Adjustment. Subsection B says the decision of the board shall be based upon the facts and not upon expressions of support or protest or lack of support or protest which may be made at the hearing. Any party may appear at the hearing in person or by an agent or by an attorney. And then further, section 7-20-D of the Utah County Land Use Ordinance states, this is criteria for approval of a conditional use. The applicant has the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that all the conditions for granting the conditional use have been met and must meet that burden based on the facts presented for the record. Expressions of support or protest alone shall not constitute the basis of approval or denial. So with that setting, I do believe we did receive several other documents this afternoon that I think Josh has provided copies to you. We may have, I think we've received another comment from Jerry Grover, representing himself as an engineer that was asked to be included. I'll allow you guys to handle that the way you want. You can formally include that as a record through a motion, and we can get you that copy and a copy to the applicant. So with that out of the way, I'll get through where we're at as far as this month's meeting. If you recall, this application was continued in February, or the January meeting, and it was continued specific to 3 items. And we'll go through those one by one. I'll cover what staff has kind of reviewed and give you that summary, and then also kind of briefly summarize what the applicant has provided. The applicant may want to expand on that if needed, at the wish of the chair. The first item, and these aren't in the specific order, but the issues that were expressed by the board to be brought back for this meeting related to water quality studies and whether or not a mutual water quality agreement for future testing could be worked out, specifically with the applicant in American Fork City. There was also some additional information wanted relative to cell phone coverage in the proposed area, I think specifically Mariella Gulch. And then also asked the county to show existing road access and specifically related to Class D roads on the property and where they lie on the property. So we'll start with the cell phone coverage issue first. The applicant has provided a letter, I believe, that you have copies of that was attached in your packet that provides the ability to provide cell phone coverage in the proposed area. The Utah County Land Use Ordinance allows, Josh, get that out to you. This application is located in the Critical Environment 1 Zone, CE1 zone, and the Utah County Land Use Ordinance lists as a permitted use under section 5-5-B-15 a cellular, telephone, radio, television, or other microwave transmission facility which has a license from the Federal Communication Commission or a successor agency. So in other words, cell phone towers up to 40 feet are allowed as a permitted use in the zone. So it's just a matter of anyone who wishes to locate that going through an administrative permitting process. In addition, the section 2-2-A-121 of the Utah County Land Use Ordinance defines what we call a stealth telecommunication transmission facility as a low visual impact transmission facility, including the antenna and electrical equipment used in a wireless telephone system. To be considered low visual impact, the antenna may be co-located on an existing transmission tower, utility pole, or other existing building or structure. The antenna shall not exceed greater than 10 feet above the highest point of the co-location building or structure. To utilize the stealth telecommunications and transmission facilities, cellular, telephone, radio, television, or other microwave transmission facilities must be a permitted land use within the zone where it is to be located. So in other words, in addition to a standalone tower, an antenna, such as a cell phone antenna, can be attached to an existing tower structure. I believe that may be the intention of the applicant. I'll allow them to expound on that further. If that's something you feel you want to attach as a condition, then I think that's something you can look into. Do you want me to just run through the 3 items and then kind of hold questions, or want to have questions on each item as we get to them? On the 3 issues.
Why don't you go ahead and run through
Okay.
the 3 and then we'll.
Okay, I'll try to be a little quicker. The next issue that was asked to be looked at relates to the public road access. And so we do have our, I believe, can't tell this crowd, but I believe our county representative from our county engineer should be here to answer any further questions. What I have is a map here I'll pull up. It's kind of a blown up area of the project area. This is our official county road map. It was recently amended to show all Class D public roads, which are kind of the subject of what we're talking about here. This area in white reflects private ownership. It's not exclusively the applicant. There are other private property owners. Josh, you have the clicker, the pointer. So as it appears, there are 3 Class D roads that are in the area that appear to lie on the subject property. We have, and I can zoom in a little more, but this is Mineral Basin Road. The purple designation is the Class D road designation as Utah County has adopted. It's an official road map. You can see that some of these roads do continue past its designation as a Class D road. Let's see the next one. We got Mary Ellen Gulch Road here. This is, I believe, where it transitions onto the subject property. You can see that it does continue on. And then the last one is Major Evans. It's a little harder to tell here because there is some other private ownership here. There is a small portion of Major Evans Class D road that does appear to lie on the applicant's property. The applicant has provided, I don't know if you'll see it really well, but we've included in your application a map showing where these roads lie as it relates to the proposed structures. So this will be a little harder to say. The orientation of this map's different. Here's your north arrow, so north is pointing over here to the county flag. This is kind of the existing Hidden Peak structures. And so specifically, let's see, we're looking at what the applicant's done is highlighted the portions of the road that lie on their property in this little red kind of pink area. And so this is the Mineral Basin Road. It does appear to be close to some of the proposed alignment of the Mineral Basin Express lift. This other Class D road is the Mary Ellen Gulch Road. Seems to hit their property right there and then continue on there. Again, here is the one of the proposed ski lifts, and then the Major Evans Road up here. I believe this is up on Ridgeline. And so there are areas of Class D roads that lie on the subject property. Those roads are and will continue to be subject to all applicable local, state, and federal regulations related to public access. Our county representative can kind of explain why the designation ends at a certain point, as I understand it. If, for example, let's go back to I think he just walked in, so we'll welcome him to the meeting by putting him on the spot. But for example, the Major Evans Road appears to transverse the private property and continue on to access public ground. And so that's why it continues the whole length. These other two appear to terminate on private property ownership. And so relative to a Class D public road access status, it's my understanding that the purpose is to find a logical turnaround spot, and that's where that designation ends. Glenn Tanner is here and can answer any further questions on that if you have any. So obviously there are some concerns related to potential conflicts of uses and access, particularly in the winter, dealing with potential skiers, snowboarders, and maybe some snowmobilers on these roads. And That is, an issue that I think the applicant has proposed to address through potentially pursuing a seasonal closure. That is a process that is would run through a public process with the county commission. It's not something that a private property owner can choose to do on their own. And then another option was to maybe consider a condition that staff can propose some language that ties the design and the use of these facilities to not allow patrons to cross these roads and avoid those conflict areas if that's the route you want to go. So that's what we had on the road issue.
Can I ask just a question while we're right?
Yeah, no worries.
Is a spot like this, does anybody know where that is, or is that just sort of random on a map, or does anybody know?
I'll let Mr. Tanner answer that. One thing we do have a map. It's on this chalkboard back here that it's a big blown up map with aerial photos, and we'll have Josh turn that around. It actually shows these roads overlaying on an aerial photo, and so you can kind of get a feel. But I'll let Glenn kind of explain the process there.
Glenn Tanner, Utah County Public Works. To answer the question, it's the best representation we could get at the time with the technology we had. So a lot of it is based off Forest Service maps in conjunction with the Forest Service, what the public has turned in. Currently we are working with the Forest Service to actually adjust all three of those roads, actually all the roads up in those canyons, to meet what they got on record so it coincides. So.
And I just wondered if it's just a random spot in the road that you cross, or if there's some sort of a gate.
Typically you're going to look at either a gated section or a place that is logical for a turnaround, a safe turnaround. Typically we terminate at if it only feeds one private landowner, we'll terminate the D road at that point. Does that make sense?
On that map, I tried to mark a couple X's where the private property ownership begins in relation. Should be fairly accurate. Again, this is just for reference purposes, kind of give you an idea. We do have representation from our county attorney's office that deals with these road issues. If you have any questions on some of those procedures also.
Just a couple of questions, if I could. Just to clarify, it is my understanding that a Class D road is a county road and thus cannot be shut off, closed by a private citizen.
It's a public road, yes.
So Snowbird has no right or authority to close that road off.
Correct.
I do believe there's a provision for a seasonal closure, but that would have to go through all
The governing
prescribed
body.
regulations. So.
Yeah.
And again, the applicant may wish to expound if needed on each of these items, and you can wait for staff to complete and then move to them, or.
Yeah, that would certainly be a question, yeah.
Okay. Or we can do it now.
That would be a question I'd have for the applicant, but why don't we let you finish and then we can
Okay.
ask the applicant. Thank you for that clarification.
I guess anything else on the roads before we move on?
I do have one other question. So you only marked 2 X's. You didn't mark a third one?
Yeah,
Just
that
lost
was,
the.
yeah, it was kind of, I didn't have a definitive spot there, and it's up on a ridge line, so obviously there is a portion of this that the applicant has acknowledged does lie on their property relative to Major Evans Road. I don't know if that's a conflict area of where active skiing would be going. There is a lift structure, it's right close there, so there could be some conflict areas there. That's what we're trying to communicate to. Thank you. You want to touch on water quality real quick?
Yeah, please.
I'll be quiet. So in your packet, we've been receiving supplemental information from the applicant that we have included when we sent out our staff reports last week, and then we tried to update you with anything else we have been receiving. Included in this new information are copies of numerous environmental studies completed in American Fork Canyon and the Mary Ellen Gulch area. documenting the impacts of historic mining on soil contamination and related water quality issues. Sources include the United States Forest Service, the State of Utah Department of Natural Resources Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and the State of Utah Department of Environmental Quality Division of Environmental Response and Remediation, among others. Those are quite numerous, and I'm not sure how much you got through those. The applicant did provide a summary of those that we included. That was prepared by Cirrus Ecological Solutions. In addition, we have part of the reason for continuance was for the staff or the applicant to work with American Fork City regarding a water monitoring proposal, and the applicant provided a draft sampling and analysis plan that was provided to American Fork City. It was also prepared by Cirrus Ecological Solutions. I believe American Fork City sent some documentation to us that we forwarded to you. I believe it was yesterday, and that kind of is their response to that, and I'll let each party kind of expound on that. We've also provided, or the applicants provided a summary of portal discharge water quality, live Yankee Mine North portal, end quote, prepared by Cirrus Ecological Solutions. And then also a copy of a statement from Ted Fitzgerald, a retired Forest Service employee, related to removal of contaminated mounting waste in American Fork Canyon and the processes that were involved with that in the last couple decades. And I believe Mr. Fitzgerald also may be here if you have any further follow-up on that. I'll just finish up here. Get to the water quality. So staff's also received additional information that we have forwarded to you. Staff's also done some research in the intervening time. We've spoken with Doug Evans, former general manager for Salt Lake County Service Area 3, which covers drinking water and sanitation services for most of Little Cottonwood Canyon. I believe he also provided a letter that's included in your packet. Staff had an opportunity to meet with Carl Adams, manager of the Watershed Protection Section of the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, specifically water quality, and Kate Johnson, administrative service manager for the Department of Environmental Quality Division, Drinking Water Division. In those discussions, we were able to review the current water quality status of American Fork Canyon, and also reviewed the current water sampling procedures that exist independent of what's being proposed by the applicant. Expound on those. It appears that every 2 years is an ideal sampling cycle for all sampling stations, several of which are in American Fork Canyon. I believe the nearest one to the project site is near Timble Fork Reservoir. And then every 6 years is the ideal sampling cycle for a given drainage basin. And so the drainage basin that comes out to Utah Valley would be, this area would be included in that sampling cycle. I guess to sum it all up from the staff's perspective, these experts that are familiar with, that we've spoken with, are familiar with Snowbird's proposal, including their proposed mitigation measures and the proposed water sampling procedure. Represented they are comfortable with the proposal as it relates to water quality, as long as there are key issues that are addressed, and mainly that relates to the avoiding not disturbing any mine tailings or waste dump pilings, and asking them what disturbance means. That would mean active construction upon these tailings or motorized vehicles. We specifically asked relative to skier activity on them that did not pose a concern to these folks, nor did avalanche activity. So that's some of the information that we've kind of compiled and the applicant submitted, and a real kind of brief summary of a lot of information. The applicant is here, as I mentioned, to further expand on these if needed, and among others that if you so wish to hear from. I guess to summarize, staff, in your updated staff report, staff's recommendation would continue to be a recommendation for approval, as the application does appear to meet requirements as contemplated by the ordinance, subject to the proposed minimum conditions in your staff report. I can run through those if you'd like, or we kind of wait till the end and review all those. So. Okay. I need a drink of water.
Bryce, one more question for you. In the proposal of the application that you guys put together, it says the subject property consists of property owned by Snowbird and others. Now, my understanding of the and others, that's just the Nash claim?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just the one mining claim. We don't have any other issues with any other private landowners or any other public property?
Not in the project area. We had we verified every mining claim that's represented as being owned in this proposed project area, and we got that information from the state tax division, and got those ownership lists from them and verified that Snowbird does own all of them other than the floor claim.
Okay, I just want
Which
to
has
clarify
been
that.
addressed in one of the later conditions that we'll get to.
Yeah, because when I pulled up the county records, that's what I noted, was that Snowbird had it all but that one claim.
Thank you, Bryce. Other questions for Bryce at this time? Okay, before we move on with the discussion, I wanted to ask the board if they would like to incorporate the letters and comments received from just today from American Fork City and Crown Castle letter, the Salt Lake County Service Area number 3, the letter from Sandy, City of Sandy, and the attorneys representing it from American Fork and Pleasant Grove, is that right? Highland.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we incorporate into the public record the letter dated February 3rd, 2016 from Hanson Wright Attorneys, and letter from the mayor of American Fork City dated February 3rd, 2016. And the letter to Mr. Bryce Armstrong from Salt Lake County Service Area number 3, Keith J. Hansen, dated January 25th, 2016. The email from Mr. Doug Evans, dated February 4th, 2016. The letter from Sandy City, dated February 1, 2016. And the letter from Crown Castle dated February 2nd, 2016.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The vote was 4-0 on that. To incorporate these extra comments and letters. So this time we'd like to ask the applicant if they would like to address some of the issues that have been brought up and continuous from last month. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Marty Banks. I am counsel to Snowbird, and we appreciate the opportunity to have gone back to work this last month and focused on those 3 issues that you asked us to come back with. And as indicated by Mr. Armstrong's comments, we have done just that, and I'd like to add a little additional information to those 3 discrete issues. And I'll take them in the same order that I think Mr. Armstrong touched on them with, and that is that with respect to the cell coverage issues, we do indeed have the commitment and the documentation from the cell provider that we've interacted with over the years, and they have indeed provided that will serve letter. And as Mr. Armstrong indicated, our tentative thought at this time, and we're happy to do that, is to do a co-location arrangement with that antenna so as to not present any incremental visual issues or any other kinds of separate structures or antennas. With respect to the second issue on the Class D roads, I'll be real brief here. This one is easy for us, and that is with respect to those 3 or 4 points that Mr. Armstrong referenced where there are Class D roads on our property within the project area. We are obviously happy and willing, and even if we weren't, we're obligated to follow the strictures of the law in that regard, and we have no intention to do anything that would be contrary to the access that is provided and ensured by that Class D status on our property. As Mr. Armstrong indicated, we'll monitor it real closely to ensure that none of that access has any adverse impact or present any material risk to some of the skiers that we're going to put on our property. And if that presents itself, and if we can't deal with that through channeling of traffic or ropes or signs, then we would certainly consider that option of a limited seasonal, of requesting a limited seasonal closing so as not to create any undue safety issues. Of course, that's permission that could only be granted by the county, and if we saw the need to explore that alternative, we would certainly go through the proper procedure of that request process. But with respect to all other use, the summer use, we have no concern and no intention, and are happy to commit to ensure that that continued access on those 4 limited points there that cross onto our private property.
I just ask a question on that one. So let's talk about summer use for just a moment. Would it be your intention? It looks like at that point, people have heretofore been probably driving all the way up and making the loop. So is it Snowbird's intent to try and identify that location and make it and stop?
Yes, we have identified that location, and in short, the road at that point becomes very difficult, and so it is a natural turning point.
So there's a natural spot there.
And that's not beyond that point, it does not have the Class D designation.
Right.
So that would be our intention.
I understand it didn't have Class D. I just want to make sure I understood what Snowbird's plans were. So you plan to stop the access on the road at the end of the Class D designation?
There or close about. We don't want to create an undue
Right.
challenge for someone to do a U-turn,
Right.
but there
At some
are.
logical point,
Yeah.
you're going to just try and stop that.
Sure. Please.
Beyond that point that you just referred to, sir,
You state your name for the record.
yeah, I'm sorry, Bob Bonar, General Manager of Snowbird, thank you. There has been use beyond that point that you're referring to in Mary Ellen Gulch. And we have had conversations with several of the four-wheel drive associations, and I would like to work with them to allow use on a safe and sustainable basis up to the Sunday Saddle area, up by the Silver Bell mine on our property. If we can, come into agreement and make that work, that would be our intent. Thank you.
So that door's sort of open that you can work out some mutual agreement there. On
Yes, sir.
your property.
I believe in our discussions. I believe that that's a pretty important point, and in the summertime we'd like to try and work that out.
Thank you.
Bob, where is that on the map? If you could use the pointer and show us what Sunday Saddle is on that map.
This one's good. That road goes, that's where the red ends. This road continues up here. And yeah, I guess maybe it would be good to have the one with that map on it, but it goes right up to the top of the proposed Sunday Saddle lift.
I'll get oriented here. So it goes up to the top of the proposed Sunday Saddle lift here. This is where we've had it closed. Many in the room that have, taken a Jeep or an ATV up here in the last few years will recall that we've had it closed off right here, and it would be our intent again to try and work together to keep that open up to that point.
Why haven't you closed it all off in the past?
Why have we not closed it all off in the past?
Right.
We have put up a lot of some signage on there that where we've allowed, the uses on our private property, but we have not closed it off. And we own a lot of other properties here in American Fork Canyon, especially in the Miller Hill area, and we've not closed those off because we've been supportive of safe and sustainable uses on our property back there, including motorized uses and horseback riding and mountain biking and hiking and backcountry and things like that on our private property for, in some cases over 30 years.
Let me mention one last thing related to the access, and that is you may have heard some references to a gate that was posted on one of those roads. There is indeed a gate up on that upper ridgeline road that Mr. Armstrong referenced. That gate's adjacent to some property owned by a gentleman named Ted Kimball. That gate, as I understand it from Mr. Kimball, was put in several years ago after seeking and obtaining the approval of the Forest Service. I understand there have been a couple of real significant, unfortunate four-wheel drive accidents involving some youngsters. And so Mr. Kimball, on his initiative with no involvement from our part, installed a gate. He installed it, he maintains it. Purportedly with the approval of the U.S. Forest Service, we had nothing to do with installing it and have nothing to do with maintaining it. So that's the only gate that I believe has any relevance to the discussion.
Now, where is that again? I'm sorry.
That would be right. Oh, I'll focus on it here. Boom. If I can get a. Bob, you're going to show me how that light went on?
So that would be
There you go.
right in this vicinity, right up here.
Thanks. The last of the three issues. Any other further questions on the Class D roads? Okay. The last of the three issues that Mr. Armstrong referenced, and as referenced also in the minutes from the last meeting, was the water quality monitoring agreement or plan that we would try to put together to anticipate on a going forward basis both what the baseline existing water quality conditions are right below our project, and do that for a period before we ever start construction, and then continue that monitoring thereafter as well, so that we can do a before and after comparison of what, if any, impacts our project may be having on the water quality. We tasked our consultant to communicate with the Utah Division of Water Quality to identify and ascertain what their model water quality monitoring format or plan would be, and based on that format, we customized a plan that we thought would work best in this scenario, and presented that proposed draft sampling and analysis plan as suggested at the last meeting to our friends at the City of American Fork, and heard back from them, I believe it was yesterday. They didn't specifically address the plan that we had proposed, but had some other more ambitious efforts about what ought to be done over there with respect to water quality monitoring. I'll leave it at that, simply to say that we've prepared a robust proposed water quality sampling and analysis plan that would both precede the proposed construction to get an adequate baseline and continue thereafter for approximately 8 years to make sure that there weren't any measurable, meaningful material adverse consequences thereafter. We think that that plan is the extra mile plan, and would be more than happy to weave the implementation of that plan as an express condition into the approval that we would ask for. If you're wondering whether that plan was provided, it was, and I've got a.
We have a copy of it.
Oh, good. Okay.
The condition,
Yeah, I believe that's in the proposed recommendation. That's a condition that does adopt that proposal.
Did you share that, obviously you shared that plan with American Fork City, I'm assuming that was part of your conversation with them?
Yes, we shared it with, I'm going to go slow here because there are a lot of parties, but wanting to be respectful of the attorney's involvement, we shared it with Mr. Casey Wright, and he'll correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe he represented American Fork City as well as some other municipalities. He's nodding yes, I'm indicating for the record.
Are you aware of his, have you seen the letter that he's delivered here tonight?
Yes, I have. And we appreciate the feedback. It would have been perhaps a little more helpful if we would have received it a little ahead of time to address some of those specifics. But I understand from reviewing the letter that I take it without, I think it was safe to say that they were not warming up to the plan that we had proposed and had a different kind of vision of what ought to happen, what kind of follow-up studies ought to happen.
Were the conditions that they proposed just unreasonable in this letter?
Yes, indeed.
Besides the bond and stuff, that was just
That among many
out of
others.
the ballpark?
Yeah. And I would add again, just for emphasis, that the proposed sampling and monitoring analysis plan that we prepared and submitted is the format used by the Utah State Division of Water Quality for these kinds of scenarios.
Other questions for Marty?
We just get to just a couple of broader questions that I wanted to follow up a little bit, not directly related to these three. Just to ask the applicant as a follow-up from last time, is that all right? I'm interested in the summer recreation piece from the AF Canyon side. Obviously, a lot of people have been going up there for a long time, and they arrive at Snowbird, not as Snowbird guests, but as public. And you talked about what you're going to do with the four-wheel drive group, and you're going to try and work something out. What do you anticipate you're going to do on your private property when campers or hikers or mountain bikers or some of those other lower impact horseback riders, et cetera, hit that private property from the AF Canyon side, and they're not a Snowbird patron at the time, right? Is it the intent I'm curious to know where you stand on that sort of stuff.
Let me answer that in two ways if I can. From the legal perspective, and then I'll invite Mr. Bonar to give really the more important answer, and that is as a policy matter.
Sure.
From legal perspective, we would absolutely intend and commit to comply with the restrictions of the Class D status that those roads have.
Great.
With respect to our other public property that does not enjoy that Class D status, I'll defer to Mr. Bonar.
Okay.
So I would simply say that those other summer uses, we've always welcomed and embraced those other types of summer uses, whether it's hikers, horseback riders, mountain bikers, across the board. We welcome them at the resort. Camping, we're fine with that as long as it meets whatever types of conditions or ordinances, whatever they might be about camping and building campfires and so forth in the right places, but we've always welcomed that.
I assume you're going to have, the plan is to have mountain bikers using your resort access site to use the trails and so forth in that area. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there'll probably be a sign that indicates they've arrived on Snowbird's private property and you're welcome for the following activities, but please respect our private property. I mean, I think a lot of people have gone up to Mary Ellen Gulch for so long, they think it's forest and they don't recognize that a lot of that is privately owned. So you'll probably try and instruct them at some point and then proceed to let them have some responsible recreation there.
Yes, and I actually think that, you know, if we get the approval tonight to, you know, for this project, we'll actually be back there more, and I think it'll give us a chance to better define the trails and, you know, for different uses and so forth. It'll give us the opportunity to provide better signage back there so that we can manage the resource better back there by keeping, you know, all of the different user groups on the existing trails or roads or whatever. It'll also give us the opportunity while we're back there, you know, to do a more effective job of, you know, keeping all the different users off some of the tailings piles back there, which is, you know, which is really the main prescription for, you know, preserving the water quality is to keep, you know, keep all user groups and, you know, especially motorized off the tailings piles up there like we did down at the Pacific and Dutchman mines.
Thank you. On another issue, maybe you can, maybe you're going to have to get your consultant on this one, I'm not sure, but I talked to you briefly about what the impact, I mean, we talked about the view shed and you've handed out, we received some about where the view shed is interrupted by the ski lifts based on the placement they're at now. And I think I mentioned last meeting, was it a viable option to consider pulling those lift towers off the ridge line? I mean, I know when you cross the one you can't, but as you top out at the other two, is that feasible, and does that do a lot to the view shed study?
Let me again just touch on one issue before deferring to Mr. Bonar, is that along that ridge line at that point where it does cross over, that point was selected for a strategic reason because it's a little bit more of a saddle location where those view shed impacts, if any, would be minimized. But Bob?
There's a lot of ideas within the industry and with you know, the different lift manufacturers and you know, with the Forest Service, for example, that all have ideas on how we can, you know, construct these types of installations and at the same time minimize the visual impact. And you know, we would draw from all those resources and good ideas to do the very best we can to minimize the visual impacts. We have experience doing it on all the other projects and with other ski resorts. There's a lot of ways that you can design lift profiles so that they minimize the tower heights and things like that, and we are committed to work with them to do that.
Thank you, and that's probably really part of the next appeal, so I may have been premature in asking that question, but they kind of seem to be together, so thank you.
Other questions? I just have one, just along the lines of access and the public access, but on the other flip side is you're not planning for commercial access. Is that correct on this side? Meaning a place where people buy tickets and you know, come up there in the summertime to ride the lift and that type of thing.
No commercial access, no retail points like that at all for ticket sales or parking. As you know, the ordinance is pretty clear that the access needs to be provided from the other side,
Right.
Sully County.
To clarify that, thank you.
I'd like to clarify one other thing on that access. Coming the other way now, as people ski the resort and gravity takes them down, there's going to be people who are going to want to make the try to Tibble Fork or whatever. What do you have a specific plan as to what you're going to do to try and preclude that from happening, so that doesn't just be, I mean, I could see that suddenly there's a route and all of a sudden, you know, a dozen people a day are using it. I mean, I know at some resorts they say if you go out of bounds in this area, you're going to lose your skiing privileges, your season pass, etc. I just wondered what your thoughts are, or whether you're gonna have gates that let people out there or what.
Yeah, I mean, we'll sign it really, really well, and, you know, we'll use ropes to, you know, as we have historically for years, to let people know when they're leaving the ski area boundary. Despite that, you know, because we all hear about it on the news every once in a while. You know, most recently, you know, with the avalanche fatality at the Canyons Resort, where somebody went outside of the ski area boundary, unfortunately. You know, it does happen where people either don't see the rope or choose not to see the rope and go beyond those boundaries. But, you know, we do it mostly with ropes and signage, and try and make those boundaries as obvious as we possibly can.
Be pretty aggressive with that. Sometimes you go to a resort and they'll have a gate that says, welcome to some backcountry skiing area, and if you get the right permit, you can go. Is that gonna be the case here?
If you're on Forest Service land, I'm probably telling you more than you want to know.
Yeah.
But on Forest Service land, you are required to make the backcountry beyond the ski area permit available for the public. And so in those cases, they do have those gates that, you know, as they're required to have, that make those backcountry areas available for public use. I think that we would like to do that on some of the areas when it's safe for us to allow that type of use, but we're also willing to have those areas be closed when they need to be closed for safety reasons, and we're also willing to limit the number of people that go into some of those adjacent backcountry areas.
Is that your call as a resort, or is that the Forest Service call about how many permits they'll issue in that regard?
If we abut Forest Service land, then we would work with the Forest Service to make that decision. On our private property, that's our decision.
Okay, so probably limited, and it'd be, I mean, any sense of how many of those you'd give in a day? I think it's kind of hard to answer that. It's really going to depend on the conditions on that given day. Sure.
You know, some days it will be zero. You know, other days it could be much higher than zero.
I just wondered if it was hundreds, tens. I have no clue what we're thinking, but I know that I've heard from some folks, okay, if 100 people start going down there and 100 cars go up American Fork Canyon to pick them up at Tibble Fork, there's some traffic impact there, but I'm asking the question so you can tell me how you're going to sort of control it.
Right. So I think the best answer I can give you is that, like we've done in other places at the existing Snowbird Resort, and what other ski resorts have done, is to work with other stakeholders and come up with an agreeable number, so we avoid conflicts and avoid overuse in backcountry areas and some of those other problems, and then determine with that group what that right number is.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
So, Chairman, if we've gone through those three limited issues that were identified at the end of the last meeting, if I can, as in reviewing the minutes from that meeting, and as Mr. Armstrong indicated earlier, we don't have anything more to add on those three specific issues of the water quality monitoring plan, the Class D roads access issue, or the cell coverage issue. And we gathered from the minutes from that last meeting that, and based on the 2 or 3 hours of public comment that you received from us and many others at the last hearing, that you haven't, you're not inclined to open the issue up generally again to all of water quality issues generally. If that's the case, then we'll sit down. If your intent was to reopen the discussion generally to water quality issues at large, then we've got a number of other individuals that are prepared to speak, but we're not interested in taking up your time and consuming, revisiting issues that were addressed last month.
Thank you. We'll see how it goes, and we'll leave that open if we need more
Okay.
testimony from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that comment, actually, thank you very much from the applicant. We need to decide as a board how we will handle public comment in terms of the focus and the time frame. We have a large number of people have signed up to make comment. We want to see if the board would like to make any limitations to the time and content of the comment. Before I do that, we do have a special request from American Fork City to talk about their concerns and their document. So I would like to kind of leave that out of this part of it because they were a party to this concern. So we'll ask them to speak actually first. I'd like to open this up for discussion and a motion.
My thought is, we heard a lot of the emotional aesthetic issues last week or last month. We said we want to have some discussion about these items. I think if there are folks who want to comment on these items here, we need to hear from them. But I don't know that we just need to hear everything that we heard last month over again.
I would agree with that. We spent 3 hours last month, and I think if we limit it to these issues, that would be most appropriate.
In terms of time, you have, and those that have comments, we'll focus on this. Is there
Probably the same time constraints as last time, weren't they? What were the time constraints last time? 2 minutes? And the 3 issues would be cell coverage, Class D road access, and water quality issues. Please.
Just to give that a little definition, last time we did indeed spend several hours talking about water quality issues generally. I presume by that you mean the water quality sampling and monitoring issues, the plan for monitoring to ascertain what impact the project could or may potentially have. In other words, water quality, the water quality monitoring plan that we put together was in response to the third of those 3 issues you asked us to come back prepared to address. Is the indication that we're opening this back up to that issue or to the mile-wide long issue of water quality generally?
I think one of the things, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, Board, but that we specifically talked about is that could you get with American Fork City and sort of work out some agreement? And so the response from American Fork City opens a lot of discussion on that broadly. I think we've got to address anything that's sort of covered in this response letter as a discussion item.
Well, if that instruction was to address water quality monitoring, which as I reviewed the minutes, that was the indication. If you want to talk about
Right.
water quality generally, that's an enormously broad question.
Yeah, you're right, it was monitoring.
My thought was we were going to come back and just, as to the water quality issue, hear from American Fork City, hear their concerns, and not rehash it with everyone again. We have, at least I have, reviewed numerous emails from people about water quality, so I think I know the import of those comments. So I'd like to hear from American Fork City. That's really what I want to hear from tonight.
So any motion in terms of how to proceed with public comment?
Well, I would move as to the water quality issue that discussion should be limited to comments from American Fork City. As to the road issue, I don't know that I have a proposal to limit that. You can limit the comments to 2 minutes if they're on those issues.
right, you have a second from Kelly. Go ahead and vote on that.
Aye.
Nay. Again, so I guess there's 3-1 with that. But we will go ahead with the comment list after American Fork, and those you can focus your comments on access and on cell phone coverage. That would be appreciated. So we will start with American Fork. There's someone from American Fork. Thank you.
Good evening.
State your name and.
You bet. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Casey Wright. I'm city attorney for American Fork City. I'll kind of be starting this. We're going to do this as efficiently as possible. So I'll just give a brief introduction, and then we're going to hand it over to a couple of people to bring in, similar to the way the applicant has done, is to have particular expertise. And at the end, I'll come in and wrap it up. We are conscious of time, and we are going to try to be as expeditious as possible. So I'm starting. The only thing I want to address on the front end, because I think it may be a question that you're on, that's on your mind based on what Mr. Banks said, is it's referenced a couple times, is that American Fork City just barely turned in their information yesterday. The reason for that, as you'll recall, the last meeting we held was on January 7th. This meeting is now February 4th. We did not receive any information from Snowbird until January 27th. They had 20 days to work on this. We have had a week to try to pull things together. We had a meeting with them earlier this week, as well as with some other cities, to try to work this thing out. So we have been involved. I just don't want you to think that American Fork sat and was waiting till the last minute, when that is anything but the truth. And I also think, and I don't fault Snowbird either for taking 20 days in light of the fact that these are complicated issues. I mean, we got to bring in water experts, they've got their experts, and so you're bringing that all together. And it does take time. And so we've tried to do that as expeditiously as possible. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to run through different people. We've got, we're going to go ahead and start with our city engineer, Nestor Gallo, who will speak, and then we'll have Ron Christensen, that's a water expert that American Fork City has retained. We'll have a member of our water board, Ernie John, and then Brad Frost, a city council member who you heard from last time. And again, they will be as expeditious as possible in their comments, and then I will come and finish it up.
Thank you. Once again, please state your name and the microphone.
My name is Nestor Gallo. I am the city engineer for the city of American Fork. My biggest concern about this project is related not to the before and after condition of the water quality, is about the potential impact of the construction of this project. We're talking about towers that are going to be 40 feet high, 75 feet high. So I brought up the question of how we're going to construct the foundation of those towers. We're talking about probably a third of that height being drilled into this solid rock. My question to the developer is, are we exposing this mountain to some kind of vibration or some kind of earth movement that could trigger the fracture of those mines and consequently have contamination of the aquifer? We have about 1,800 feet long mine tunnels with hundreds of thousands of gallons of contaminated water. By the time we catch this pollution, it may be too late. If I were the developer, I would probably be very concerned about the liability I am incurring by going into construction without addressing this issue.
Thank you.
That's right.
My name is Ron Christensen. I represent and I'm a consultant for American Fork City. I'm a PhD level water expert, professional engineer, and a hydrologist, and I have 35 years of experience. I'm a long-term resident of Highland and American Fork area. American Fork City's main concern is the water quality of its water supplies. The city's water supplies come from springs in American Fork Canyon. Wells in the deeper valley fill aquifers of Utah Valley, and the American Fork River. On page 50 of a 2008 study, the U.S. Geological Survey determined that a substantial amount of American Fork River water sinks into the groundwater system below the canyon mouth and recharges the deeper groundwater aquifers of the valley fill, where the city's wells draw water. Rapid valley growth since then has undoubtedly increased the draw from the river into the aquifers and will do so in the future. Any contamination of the quality of the American Fork River will thus eventually reach the city's wells and those of other communities. The applicant has proposed to construct ski resort facilities over the top of a hazardous waste site that includes a toxic stream of water discharging to the headwaters of the American Fork River. Just stating that known fact raises red flags that approval of that proposal should proceed with caution and extreme caution. The stream at the site remains so toxic that fish and insects cannot survive until enough fresh water comes in downstream to dilute the toxic contaminants. The area is rich in heavy metals. It is well known that any water coming in contact with excavated material in such areas dissolves and picks up toxic metal contaminants. The deep excavations required for the lift towers and construction of trails and roads will bring up new excavated rocks and material that can add to the toxic contamination of the water. Rock blasting or use of heavy equipment to construct the rock foundations can cause a cave-in of a mine tunnel and cause a large flush of contaminated water into the canyon stream. The applicant has not provided sufficient facts to show that these problems will not occur, and to show by a preponderance of evidence that the water quality will not be degraded by their construction. That's one of the main concerns, or their operations. Dilution of the contaminants by fresh water is not the solution, which seems to be the solution that the applicant is proposing. Any new contamination should not be tolerated. We already have a toxic stream that is being diluted. Irrigation water quality standards must not be used, which is something that they would like you to use. The state's water quality standard for the river needs to be updated. The river water can and will affect drinking water. State and federal drinking water standards are maximums. We should stay as far away from this as possible rather than use them as targets. We must keep our irreplaceable aquifers as clean and as pure as possible. The application should be denied. In the alternative, the city requests that any approval be made contingent upon the conditions submitted in the city's letter to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, I have some questions. Go ahead. So I understand the concern with the disturbance of the land. It would seem to me that the land is being disturbed right now, isn't it?
The land will be disturbed much more when you start building the towers. You're basically going to mine into the ground,
Right.
into those rocks, and bring up new material.
Very specific location. Right now we have, my understanding, listening to everybody, is there's pretty much unlimited access to all of this area over the top of the tailings, and that has been the case for 100 and so years. So it seems to me those tailings areas are being disturbed on a regular basis.
Not like they will be during construction. It's the construction
If your
phase.
assumptions are correct.
Yeah, the construction phase is what we're concerned about the very most.
Okay.
Okay.
Now you mentioned it's a hazardous waste site.
Yes, it is.
And who's declared it to be a hazardous waste site?
EPA did that, and that it decided that it's not going to be, there's not going to be anything additional done to protect or to change the situation that is there. They decided it was best to just leave it alone because it was too hard to get in there and get the material out.
Okay,
But
that's what I had read.
but
So
this
we don't
but
have a
this
current hazardous waste site in the sense that we have a circle of violation on the property.
no, but it is the disturbances of, we're going to go in and just change the status quo. We're going to disturb it.
So
Okay.
the stream that exists coming out of Mary Ellen Gulch is now toxic. Is that
Yes,
what I understood?
that's correct.
It has been for years.
Yes.
And the impact on the city water has been what to this date?
To this point, it has not caused trouble, but we don't, in the future, as that's the reason for a baseline, and the American Fork City would like to see a 4-year baseline without construction at all, because it takes 2 years. Well, you can get 2 years of dry years and 2 years of wet years, and then you have the argument about whether what really is going to happen if you have a wet season and your data is based on dry years, or you have the opposite argument. And 4 years would be better. It would avoid all the confusion and give everybody a chance to know really what's happening with that stream.
I understand the difficulties with water percolating through systems and how fast and slow, depending on conditions. There's all kinds of things that affect that. I appreciate that. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Ernie John. I'm president of American Fork Metropolitan Water District, also the president and water master for American Fork Irrigation Company. I wanted to talk a little bit about the water studies that the applicant has been noting. You notice the applicant has noted many water studies that have been done over the years. They have not provided you a copy of those water studies. The reason that American Fork City is concerned is those water studies were done in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Two things have changed since then. One is the science has changed. Since the last studies were done, it's been about 20 years. And so there's been a lot of science change in water and environmental science in those 20 years. Second, the studies that were done were predicated upon one thing, and that was leaving this land untouched. No construction, no additional tower sites, it was predicated on leaving it as it is, as we talked earlier, as Mr. Christensen noted, that as you start to dig, these tower sites are big, they're large, and they're going to require large excavations in order to support towers of the height the applicant is asking for. The applicant has not shown exactly where those tower sites are, so we have no idea where they're placed, so we can't make a recommendation. We can't even ask our people to take a look at them because there hasn't been a geotechnical study done. There hasn't been an environmental study done of exactly where the towers are going to be placed, so we don't know what's going to happen when they start to excavate. And we feel that those studies need done, and that's what our letter asks to do, is you deny this application to allow these studies to be done so the applicant can then present us with a preponderance of evidence to prove that they're not going to affect the water quality for American Fork City and the river of American Fork. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Brad Frost, and I'm a councilman for American Fork City. Probably the dumbest one in the room when it comes to all these technical things. But I do understand your positions, where you're in, and I recognize that this application and this process is extremely difficult. As a council member, we handle development all the time, development with a lot of money behind it, for sure. But as I really thought about it, and I think that a lot of people would agree that resting on your 4 shoulders, because Mr. Duvall is not involved, might be the biggest decision in this county in probably in the last century, decade. I don't know. It's huge. And so, as I cannot speak to the details, we have hired people, but I rely on a set of principles, and I would like to just project them to you in a respectful manner. And that would be that we deal in smaller ways in city governments and state as public safety. And if there's a question on my mind weighing on a decision like that with public safety, I always err on the side of safety. And I would hope that you might consider that you might have a we said, they said thing. And so the error I would hope you would do is in public safety. Now, American Fork City has definitely introduced some pretty high standards, but we are affecting 200,000 people that are downstream. And I think that it would be prudent to really review those, and if you're going to accept this application, make it conditional. Because there will be dozers, there will be all kinds of equipment up there. And when we met with Snowbird this last week, we asked them point blank, do they know where the shafts are? And they told us, and it's on public record to be seen if you want to view it, they do not know. We can have speculation where a shaft is, and we know sizes. We can put a few simple math to it, but they admittedly, and I would invite them to come up and say, we know where every shaft is, and we know that if we hit that shaft, what will happen? And so we asked them to even do they have an emergency contingency if they hit a shaft? And they did not. And so I'm part with the same thing that I said before, that if you're going to err and you're on a fence one way or the other based upon what you see, it would be my plea that you err in the side of safety. Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yes.
So American Fork City has springs for all its water? No, we have springs at the closest springs that we have that will that any city has is American Fork City. It's the Cave Camp Springs, which is just by the Timpanogos Cave. That, now the applicant thought at the time when they presented to us provided 2% of our water, and they couldn't be more wrong. It's about 60% of our water, Cedar Hills water, the Developmental Center, Lone Peak High School. And that is the closest part of the stream. The others are aquifer-driven wells, and those are throughout. One spring and then wells is more in the valley.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And you mentioned Cedar Hills participates in the spring up the canyon?
No, portions of Cedar Hills does. Due to the placement of their development, we've entered into agreement to provide them water in some of that corridor coming through. If you're familiar with the area by the high school, Lone Peak High School, Walmart, we provide water through them. We provide water to the state of Utah for the developmental center and things like that. But as you get away from North County Boulevard, Cedar Hills is driven by well water at that point.
So, you know, and I don't expect you to know, but Pleasant Grove, Linden, Alpine, Cedar Hills, it seems to me they're all similarly situated as American Fork City,
yeah,
with the water situation.
You know, I can't speak in detail. Generalities is that, yes, American Fork has a bit of an advantage because our spring fills tanks up to 10 million gallons that you might see them right off the mouth of American Fork Canyon. The danger to some of the other communities is that the aquifer and how they draw from that aquifer through wells, there is no holding tank. And so it's directly driven to the houses. And as a aquifer is contaminated or whatever it is, that source of water, the well becomes now the straw, demanding the water, and it demands it hard and heavy at times to feed a population of 200,000 people. And so that's what I know. I'm not certain about Lehigh City. I know they draw from the same aquifer, but I'm not familiar with the details of their water system.
So as far as you know, American Fork City is the only one with a well up the canyon.
No, a spring.
Spring, sorry.
Correct. As far as I know, Nestor could maybe answer to that, but or for sure. Is that correct, Ernie?
Describing where that spring comes from is problematic, I would guess, because it comes from the ground.
Comes from the ground. Yeah.
Who knows how it's all connected?
Correct.
Yes, sir. We don't know exactly how it's interconnected, but American Fork has 2 springs up the canyon. The only other entity that has a spring up the canyon is for Timpanogos Cave. National Park Service also has a spring that they use to pull drinking water for the Timpanogos Cave area also.
Are there any springs further east of that location? Or
Not that serve any of the entities in North Utah County.
Of course, we know there's springs that enter into the canyon because that's what the dilution process can be. And so, yeah.
Excuse me. Just, I don't know that it helps you. That probably is. I apologize, gentlemen. Just to give you an example, from just above the confluence there where it comes together from the North Fork and South Fork, where you turn off to go to Tibble Fork, there's a USGS measuring station there that all the cities and all the entities and actually the public has access to. Between that point and farther down at the mouth of the canyon, almost an extra 5,000 gallon a minute comes into there in various springs that are not marked, just to add additional water down through the latter part of the canyon that, again, we don't know where it comes from. We know it's snowmelt. We know that it perks into the ground, but we don't have no one has accurately mapped that. And it would be almost impossible to accurately map it.
You get a nanobug and stick it in the mouth.
I have another question for you, if I could. Obviously, water quality is a big issue, I'm sure, in Salt Lake, and I'm just curious, you know, the watersheds in Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood have faced similar issues. Has American Fork reached out at all to those other entities in Salt Lake to see how is your water quality, how's it been going, what kind of disruptions are your conditions much more insurmountable than the conditions they imposed early in their process, and has any of that dialogue taken place?
If I could, I don't want to speak for Casey Wright, but I'd like to make the comment. We got the proposal from the applicant and only had less than a week to work on it. So no, sir, we haven't, but that mainly is because we haven't had the time.
Well, and I'll fill in just a little bit.
Yes.
We have had brief conversations with them, and I don't know the details of it, but it's our understanding that they impose much stricter standards on that side of the mountain than are being proposed on this side. And we're trying to run down some of those details, but in the time frame, we just haven't been able to do so.
Well, and in respect to this, I'm thinking is that I guess we can, again, it's one of those, they do this, we do this, you know. We're looking at what's before us here, and as I can characterize water quality issues is what I have been learning and what I've been told. You can have a gush of water that might represent contamination real quickly. But again, I think one of our biggest concerns is probably more like a termite effect. That'll just eat away, and then sooner or later it could find its way down. Thus, the city has proposed the very stringent, there is no question that they're very stringent testing for things, bringing in multiple state agencies, and we believe that this process should be methodical and planned out and coordinated, deeply coordinated, and we feel like this whole process has been very rushed. And is it rushed at the expense of 200,000 people and water quality now or even 20 years down the road? And so we're very, very concerned. And again, thank you for your time and thank you for volunteering to do this.
Just one quick follow-up. Did I understand, even with the conditions that have been described here, you think these are less stringent conditions than are imposed on the other side?
That is our understanding, exactly. That is exactly our understanding.
What?
Where does that understanding come from? You said you haven't had time to really
brief
review
conversations.
it, so...
Yeah, if this was a court of law, it'd be hard for me to present evidence. I just haven't had time to go up, gather, and look at those standards again. this is water expertise that's over some of our heads as to the exact details, but we have made phone calls up there and tried to figure out what they've done versus what are down here, and it's that's our understanding. I can't give you firsthand knowledge.
Okay, so based on some conversations that you've had with folks up in Sandy, Little Cottonwood,
Some of our people have had it.
your feeling is that this draft sampling and analysis plan is less stringent than what's in place in
Yes.
Little Cottonwood?
Yes.
It's our understanding that they have a water treatment plant. And so if somebody from Salt Lake County, somebody comes to this pulpit, I would ask them about that treatment plant and the purpose behind it.
Now we heard testimony last month that the water coming out of Little Cottonwood Canyon, Little Cottonwood Creek, is cleaner now than it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
We've had lots of disturbances up that canyon in that 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, as we think about that side or our side, our concern right now in American Fork City is a construction project at the headwaters of American Fork Canyon and what it might do. The questions, and there's a lot of questions, we ask you to have a very resolved feeling in your mind without any doubt that your decision will not affect that. And if so, we feel like our conditions help resolve that. We've given you that resolution to resolve those doubts.
Now, you've asked in your letter, maybe I should ask Casey this, for a $100 million bond. And what would the purpose of a $100 million bond be?
That was Mr. Christensen's estimation, but it's my understanding that was set in place because of the potential damage that can be done. Again, we're talking about a lot of people. It's easy to say, is American Fork, are they just crying chicken little here? And the answer is no, we're concerned. We hope we are, but we're concerned about the water. If that water comes down and you do that kind of damage, is Snowbird going to be in a position that they can take care of that? I'm not even talking about the potential illness or loss of life, loss of business industry. So that's what that bond was set in place. I know it's high. I know it sounds like a lot of money. But the reality is with the type of damage that could be done, it's not out of the realm.
Just 1 second. Bryce would like to make a comment.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just to interject in trying to help on this water quality issue. I do believe we have representatives from the State Department of Environmental Quality relative to water quality in attendance tonight, and may be able to shed some light on some of those questions that you were referring to. They've been really helpful for staff, and I appreciate them being here, so that may be some use.
And let me just address that, because I think that's an important point that also goes to, though we feel this is so rushed, that we're going through such an important decision, we would love to have the opportunity to speak with the state. We would love to have, it seems like the staff is just getting things at the last minute and it's being presented to them. They're throwing them up to you guys at the last minute. You're trying to make a decision. And all that is, there is no rush here. There is no fire as to why we have to push this through. And we would really like to talk to the state. We'd like to see what their analysis is. We'd like to talk and have a detailed conversation with the other side of the mountain, see what they've done, and take our time and do this right. We're not trying to stop this development. American Fork City honors private property rights. American Fork City loves industry, and we love what it brings to our community. We're not trying to stop that, but our first requirement, as you've heard a number of times, is safety. So I'll let Rob, and then I'll finish off.
Rob Shelton, American Fork City Council. I want to address a couple of issues. One is we just had our council retreat. What was it, Brad? A week ago, 10 days ago, sometimes it runs together. And one of the biggest issues coming out of that was our water and the growth that we're seeing in American Fork. You can drive up there, and I was born and raised in American Fork, born in 1981. That town has changed dramatically. We're seeing dramatic growth on the north end of the county. And so we talked about needing to up our water line, up the American Fork Canyon. And our public works director is here, or he was, Odell's back there. He could probably give more specifics about it, but we are doubling the capacity of that water line from that Cave Camp Springs. So we're going to be bringing more water down the canyon. We're prepared to put a $4 million investment to rerun that water line because that's how important it is, and that needs to be there for our growth. Second point I wanted to make is my grandfather is Bud Shelton, and he worked in those mines up there. at the young age of 10, if you can believe that or not, before child labor laws came into play. And I had a chance to celebrate his 97th birthday with him in between these two meetings, and I asked him about that. And you need to really understand the type of water that is pouring into those mine shafts on a regular basis. He said in the mines he was working in, it was wastewater deep all the time, and they had to have 3 pumps going full time just to keep it at wastewater height. The other thing that I think that we've been trying to address, and hopefully it's been impressed upon your minds, is that the best course of action, as Snowbird has stated, is to do nothing, is to leave it alone. But when we start talking about blasting into mine shafts that we don't know where they go and where they end up at, and yes, we have some primitive mapping that was done back in the 1900s that we're now trying to overlay 100 years later to see where those mine shafts go. Why not provide us the engineering report on how deep are those going to go? Why not do some sampling to help us understand where they're going to be at? And the argument you'll hear from Snowbird is that that's part of the building permit process. Well, I'm sorry, that's too far down the road. The conditional use has already been approved at that point in time. That needs to be addressed at this point because that conditional use is so important upon public safety. So appreciate your time and have answered questions you have as well.
I'm really struggling with this because you just said that Grandpa worked in the mine in 3 feet of water. And they were pumping it like crazy. Well, they pumped it somewhere, and it was yucky water back then. So since 1880, 1900, 1920, we've had yucky water pouring down that canyon.
Correct. I can see where you're going on that.
I don't see new water coming out of this, poking a hole in the ground. And I don't mean to make light of this hole in the ground that they're going to do, but I recognize they hit a shaft. That may divert the water, but it's still going to go downhill.
Correct.
It's not new water. It's not new dirty water.
But how long has it been sitting there in the contaminants for? Does that make sense?
It's moving. Water doesn't just sit.
How do you not know that
it percolates through the ground?
Sure, I understand that. So let's talk about this. When was the last time someone was in that mine shaft? So my grandpa was born in 1919. At 10 years old, that was 1929 when he was working in those mines. That's almost 100 years ago. When did those mines close, and what individual has been in them to ascertain what kind of conditions are there? Is it clay that's laying there? I don't know.
Well, I guess that's my point too. This isn't a new issue.
The new issue is the
water's been circulating through there for 100 some odd years.
And it's been working great that way. But when we start to change things up there by blasting into the mountain, for lack of a better term, going down 30, 40 feet to pour concrete, what's going to happen at that point? And that's why we're saying we don't have enough information. We don't even know where they're proposing to put those ski lifts.
Well, can't we limit it so that they don't do it?
That's what we're trying to do.
That's an easy one.
It is.
Don't put a ski pole where a tailings is.
Okay.
What about a shaft?
That's
a shaft.
So that's our concern, is no one knows where those shafts are, but they haven't even told us where those where the what you call them, poles or towers are going to be at. That's our problem, is that as Casey mentioned, this is all being rushed so quick. We didn't even get the packet because it was protected by corporate information till 2 days before the last meeting. We then get this water quality proposal 1 week before it. We have to go out and find a PhD expert to hire in our city, and how is he going to take a week to be able to review it? As Casey kind of gave that great analogy, there's no fire here. Why are we rushing this so fast? And you can go look on YouTube, because we believe in transparency in our government. We broadcast every one of our meetings, and for 1 hour and 45 minutes you can see the discussion that took place with Snowbird. And very little was there because so many questions were there. If I were in Snowbird's positions, I'd have the stakeholders at the table, and let's talk about the concerns and how we can address those concerns. But to every point it's been, no, we're going to go this other direction, we go this other direction. It hasn't been, in my opinion, forthright to where we can sit down and try to understand where each other are coming from and really understand our concerns. So we're left to leaving these high standards because we don't know. And as Brad mentioned, I would rather be on the side of caution than on the other side of some other instance that's going to take place that's going to cause a catastrophic event for us. Water, what more precious resource can you have? What more can we do to defend that resource? There's no life without it. I'll end my comments unless you have other questions. I'd be happy to address, but I'll leave it with Ron and then.
I'd like to address the water quality, the fact that to this point there hasn't been, from what we can tell, a problem, and that is that the main concern that we have is that we have not been provided sufficient information to do an analysis and evaluate what they're going to do during construction. We don't know where the towers are going to be. We don't. The maps that I was provided were such a jumble in so many different directions that it took me 3 or 4 hours to piece together what even they were going to do. And the information that we have is insufficient to be able to, what needs to happen, and what I normally see is a preliminary design report and a preliminary design plans that answer these questions that we have all got right now, and that would cut that list of conditions that we would ask this board to adopt. It would cut those down to in a third, maybe to a quarter or less, if we had a design report and design plans that we could actually see where everything's going to be. But we weren't provided that, and so in order to protect the water quality of American Forks City's wells, we've had to put in place the process that will make sure that will happen, and requested that the board do that. Thank you.
Can I ask one other quick question? I don't know who from American Fork can answer this, but and maybe I'm got misinformation, but I think I've heard that, are they going to do some major work on the dam at Table Fork? Does anybody know that?
Yes, sir.
They are.
Yes,
so
sir.
Have they gone through this sort of impact on blasting and excavation and stuff, and sort of given you what you need to be comfortable
Yes, sir.
with
We
that? That'd
actually
be a good model for these guys to follow. Perhaps.
we actually had to file an environmental assessment. During that environmental assessment, there were public hearings held. At one of those public hearings, we have on record in 2013 that Snowbird requested there be room left at Table Fork for them to put a potential tram. So that's part of the public record. But yes, sir, we did environmental assessments. We just recently made some changes in the way we're doing Table Fork and the way we had to do it. And we are limited to the scope of exactly where we can dig, where we can move material. And we had to make changes because we realized that we maybe hadn't made our area quite big enough. So we're actually going to have to haul material from up below the canyon, clay up into there, because it was outside of our environmental assessment area. So yes, we went through very strict.
And I just use that as an example. So
Yes.
there is some common ground that can be reached, because that's
Yes.
a pretty, from my understanding, it's a pretty major excavation project, I guess.
It is a major excavation. There will be no blasting.
No
Okay.
blasting.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from Snowbird whether they intend to blast or not.
Okay. Now, one other thing with Table Fork, we can't dredge the sediment out of Table Fork. That sediment has a high arsenic content, so we can't move that, and it would have to be disposed of as toxic waste, because you ask what's been coming down the mountain for 100 years, that's it. And the sediment is different than dissolved minerals in the water. Those are two separate items. Okay, but the sediment that comes down during high water and settles in Table Fork, today the settlement in the bottom of Table Fork has arsenic in it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I think we've hit on actually part of the answer for why we haven't had trouble down at the mouth of the canyon, and that's because Table Fork's been taking it. Table Fork's been dropping the sediments out, and they haven't come down to that big debris basin down there at the mouth of the canyon and settled there. They've settled there at Table Fork, and that's a solid good reason as to why we haven't seen the contamination down at the mouth of the canyon. Table Fork can't be excavated. It has to be raised because of the contamination that's sitting there. Thank you.
Thank you for letting these experts and these people make their points. I'll just follow up. I want to make clear, again, even though we're in the topic, this issue for American Fork City is about water quality. That's why we're here. It's arguably that this type of development could be very good for our city. It could be good for our industry. It could be good for revenue coming into the city. There could be a lot of positives that come to the city from Snowbird. But we cannot exchange those potential positives from the harm that may come to our citizens. Now, if it's shown and we go through these tests and it shows that there will be no damage to the water, great. Let's move forward, take the conditions we want to, and move forward with this development. But let's take the time to make sure that we've got it right. Now, staff hit on earlier, and I want to hit some of these things, going through what is the requirements for a conditional use permit. And it should be denied if it does not satisfy the county requirements. Remember, the idea behind a conditional use permit is it can be issued if it satisfies the requirements set forth in the Utah County Land Use Code. And Ordinance 7-20 sets forth these requirements that must be met. And I want to emphasize who has the burden here. The burden is not on American Fork City, it is not on the residents of Utah County, and it is not on Utah County itself. This burden lies upon the applicant. In this case, the applicant is Snowbird. And they have to prove by preponderance of the evidence the conditions have been met that will qualify them for a conditional use permit. Now, I'm just going to hit some of those conditions as they apply to the water quality. First and foremost, in 720-C, the conditional use shall not degrade the public, health, safety, or welfare. They have the burden to show that they have done that. They can't rely on old studies, what might have happened, or we're good for it, trust us, we've been good other places. We like them, we trust them, but that's not the way you protect the public health and safety. Snowbird's failed to meet its burden with the last minute filings, with the documentation that's outdated, much of it. They failed to satisfy that burden. Now, I want to focus real quick on who put this standard in place. American Fork didn't, Utah County did. And because Utah County believes the same that we do. The first and foremost is safety. That's why they put these requirements in place. We didn't write this code, they wrote it. And we think it's a good code and we think it stands for the right thing. Technology. And here's what you must find is, again, according to the code, the Board of Adjustments must find that neither flooding, water quality, nor other aspects of the environment will be unreasonably diminished by the approval of the development, and that the conditions of approval can be attached and that are attached can be reasonably expected to mitigate the environmental impacts. Snowbird may be able to do that, but they have not met that burden yet. And that's what we want them to do. We're not trying to delay this forever. Much of Snowbird's backup data and all this information that you've been provided, and there's no way that you could have gone through this and understood this because there's just too much. We've tried, so we know your shoes, and we've tried to go through it and get it speed. It's limited, and some of it's based on old information. And what I want to emphasize too is it's based on, again, but it's not disturbed. They haven't provided, they being Snowbird, plans. Hey, we're going to put this shaft, this pole here, and it's going to go into this shaft, and these are the mitigation steps we have taken to make sure that damage doesn't happen. They haven't gone that far. We don't know where they're going to be drilling. We don't know where they're going to be placing poles. We don't know if they're going to be blasting or not. That's a great question. Why don't we know the answer to those questions? How can you at this point make a good decision without that information? Snowbird studies that they provided so far are not based on what the impact of the development is, because they haven't given that information. They're saying there hasn't been a problem up to this point. We don't think there'll be a problem in the future. American Fork City and the citizens of American Fork, we hope they are right. But we don't want to operate on just hope. We want to make sure so that when we face our residents, we can say we did what we could to make sure that your water is safe. and that the water for generations to come will be safe. Remember, once the damage is done in that water, it's too late. Once our water is contaminated, it takes years and years to resolve that problem. So again, I want to emphasize, we don't think Snowbird's the enemy. We like Snowbird. We think they can do some good things, but we have to protect our citizens. And we think that what has been done so far does not satisfy the burden that they have. It's not our burden, it's their burden. And we would ask, we're using the term deny because it doesn't meet the requirements of the code. But even if it's not an ultimate denial what we're asking for. We're asking that the proper studies be done, that we get a plan that we can look at, that can be analyzed, that we don't have last minute things coming in to the Board of Adjustments trying to make a decision. We don't have the county trying to deal with all this information at the last minute. Information that took, again, I'll emphasize, that took the developer, Snowbird, even after it knew what it was going to do, 20 days to provide information to us after it had already moved through with its application. And now we have 7 days to try to come up with a response. We can slow this down. There is no hurry here. Any questions?
I do. Do you have any sense in your mind, what is a reasonable amount of time, for you guys to take this thing, digest it, look at it? Do you need 30 days? Do you need a year? Do you need tell me what you think you need?
Speaking
I
frankly,
know it's a big yes.
I'm thinking at least 6 months to get the experts in to take a look at it, and some of that's contingent upon Snowbird. We've got to see where they're going to put their poles. Are they going to blast? Once we get that information from them, then we can take it and look at it. It's put us all in a bad situation because I know we want to, if they meet it, we don't want to hold up a development. They own the property. They have a right to do some things with it. Absolutely. But they've got to make sure that they've taken the steps that they're obligated to take. And at this point, they just haven't taken them.
Any other questions for American Fork City? Okay, thank you. We have a request from a member of the board that there's someone from you said the state is here that could address some questions.
Yeah, and I guess before I volunteered, to be fair, I was referring to general procedures that were referenced, and feel free. I'll let them feel free to elaborate as they see fit.
How does the board feel about that? Did you Okay, so we're all in agreement that we can. So who's here from the state?
I guess they'd have to be willing to. I kind of volunteered them, so.
Someone from the state willing to volunteer. Or I don't know. You see it through.